It's proven. It's a fact. There's millions of studies about it. But also, there's also studies saying that, ketogenic diets can prevent cancer because cancer cells can't use ketones. So there's some things that say that as well. So,
Interesting.
Well,
a lot of people
are set in their ways, and it's hard to change. So
absolutely.
Usually the best thing to do is be real with what you really want. Do you want to just get in shape and look good, or are you wanting to live longer? Because those two things are very different.
Yeah.
If you want to be super ripped and have everybody stare at you and go to the beach and feel, good about yourself and whatever, then you don't necessarily need to be healthy. And that's a lot of people are like that. Like bodybuilders are that way. There's a lot of fitness contestants that aren't necessarily healthy.
Choose, vanity over health.
Yeah, your body composition has nothing to do with your health.
Oh, no.
I mean, it does somewhat, but, I know a lot of people that are super fat that their blood profiles are great, dude. Are awesome. Like, their cholesterol's great. They don't have high blood pressure. Everything's fine. They just carry a lot of body fat. There's lean people that are in good shape, though, too, but I'm not saying that none of them are, but...
Oh, yeah, you could be super skinny and have tremendous health problems because of the way you eat.
Yeah, it's a trip that for years people said low-fat, high-carbohydrate, low-calorie diets are the way to go. And then there was all these studies saying higher protein diets, you lose more weight, you increase lean body mass, higher protein diets are the way to go. And then you throw in a ketogenic diet, now you have the third macronutrient out of all of them. We're going to say you eat a lot of fat, don't eat any carbohydrates, which is the complete opposite of what they said before. And then, proteins, are in the middle.
Low.
So we're just trading out macronutrients. We're just saying, okay, low fat, high carbs, high fat, low carbs, high protein, moderate carbs, low fat. You know what I mean? So, there's a zone diet that's actually 40% carbohydrate, 30% protein, 30% fat. You can't get more balanced than that. And this guy, Barry Sears, talks about like prostaglandins and reducing inflammation. It's like for longevity and health. And it's probably a good idea. Does it really work? I don't know. There's a lot of people. Yeah, he has studies too in his. Dude, every study, is biased.
Yeah,
there's some.
That's
you can't
thing,
even
man.
read the real shit through the bullshit, and that's why everybody has so many questions.
That's kind of why we're talking about it. Not necessarily say like ketogenic's the best way or any diet's the best way. It's more along the lines of there's so much research, and the thing about science is it continually changes. How when I was growing up like young, the pyramid, food pyramid is way different. It's different now. It's not like. It's like vegetable. We need to eat more vegetables, and Americans just don't, man. And your gut bacteria is super important. A lot of people, I think there's new studies on that within the last couple of years. Obviously, the East has understood that. Asians, man, like we're just talking about.
I don't know if they understood it, but
kimchi, kefir.
By chance, they're eating all that stuff. It's really just, you really just got to think on, everybody's different. There's people that can eat anything and they, it doesn't matter, it just doesn't show, and they don't have to worry about it, but there might still be some health effects of bad fats or bad carbohydrates, it really just depends on how you feel. To me, it makes more sense to eat a lot of fibrous carbohydrates, a lot of vegetables that aren't starchy, to me, and eat nuts and seeds and fatty things that aren't meat based, maybe really. Butter, I think, is actually a good one, especially when you talk about bulletproof coffee and caffeine, and later when you're in ketosis. Butter has a lot of benefits, even though it's a high saturated fat.
Not just any butter though.
You can
you want really yellow.
If you're worried about the cattle, how they're being treated and all that shit, then you probably shouldn't eat butter. But olive oil, all the monounsaturated fats you really want to load up on, those are good. Coconut oil's been getting a lot of
MCT
oil. Those are saturated fats. Coconut oil is full of saturated fat. If you were to say eat saturated fat on a high carbohydrate diet, that's probably a recipe for cardiovascular disease, because you're using glucose and the metabolism's different. But when you don't have high carbohydrates and you have low carbs, it allows you to eat more fat and get away with it. So monounsaturated fats are omega-6 fatty acids, and they will be used for energy. They actually make good prostaglandins that decrease inflammation. Olive oil is full of it. Macadamia nuts are really good for monounsaturated fat. A lot of nuts are monounsaturated fat based. Some are saturated. The polyunsaturated fats are the ones that are like omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6 are the ones you don't want. Omega-3s are the ones that reduce inflammation. Mm-hmm. You know, and then you have
so take fish oil if you're on keto. That'd be
and then
that'd be good.
Yeah, fish oil is DHA. But fish oil is a little different. Yeah, but it does have some omega-3s. But DHA is in fish oil. They say like we need those type of fats. The only way to get it's from fish, which is kind of weird. I don't know. There's nuts have some omega-3s, but not like fish. Fish is the only one that actually has a certain type of fats, I believe, that you need. I could be wrong on that, but so I mean, if you look at like fat metabolism and the different types of fats, people's knowledge on that is not too great as if you were to talk about carbohydrates. You talk about carbohydrates, dude, they'll tell you starchy, fibrous carbs, slow, maltodextrin, and this corn-based carbohydrate, and I take this pre-workout and this carb, and my macros and this and that. But you talk about fats, and they just think that, well,
I mean, your brain like needs
your brain
fats.
prefers ketones, actually. Some people believe, instead of glucose. So, which makes you think like way back, like you want to talk about paleo. I don't think like in the Paleolithic era, people were eating 3-4 times a day, eating steak and like
berries,
fibrous carbs. They were probably fasting until they killed something. I'm sure they didn't just go out and kill something. Like, I'm sure it took them a couple days or 2 or 3 days. Yeah. Like, it's not like, we're lions where we could just chase something down and eat it. You know what I mean? And I'm sure they were eating berries. They're probably eating berries and mushrooms and, shit from the ground, dude. I mean, think about it. Like, think about that. We don't have, like, Triceratops steak or anything, like I don't know, man. Like some of the ways they come up with these diets and market it, and people fall for it. Like,
there's no holy grail. There's no cup that you can drink from that's going to give you eternal life. There's nothing. There's no diet that's better than another diet. What it really boils down to is discipline, consistency, having some understanding about what you need to eat and what not to eat. I mean, there's that's the thing with everybody saying is like, eat this, no, don't eat this. And then a couple years changes. Eat a lot of this, don't eat this.
Yeah, I mean, but I think you gotta have like you have to be able to be honest with yourself. Like, if you refuse to give up some food knowing that it has cholesterol, knowing that there's some health disadvantages to it, and you refuse to do it just because of taste, then that's fine. But don't, don't complain when something happens, or don't complain when later you get high blood pressure. Don't complain when your cholesterol's screwed up. Don't complain, just because you exercise and eat somewhat healthy doesn't mean you're not going to get those things. A lot of those things have to do with genetics. Mm-hmm. But also, when you're talking about diet, I mean, I should just come up with a diet and call it a Neolithic period. Well, you know what? The Neolithic period was actually the right diet, not the Paleolithic period. The Neolithic period, because they ate mostly vegan foods. And here's why. And come up with a fucking bullshit story and then market it, and then people will be like, yeah, you know what? Fuck that paleo diet. That was wrong. This new Neolithic diet is the right one to go with. Right? You know what I mean? So you have 3 macronutrients. You change the percentages on them. You label the diet with a name, and then you market it, and you put out some bullshit studies, and you give some crazy story on why it's... And everybody's going to believe it. And it's going to work, because as long as you set the calories where you need to be, you'll probably see a change. And if anybody tries any diet and they've been overeating, whatever diet you try is going to be on a reduced caloric intake,
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably going to work. And then, so once it works for one person, the word's out. Oh, the Neolithic diet.
Yeah.
God damn it! I knew I shouldn't have been eating meat. As long as you don't call it vegan, as long as you don't call it vegetarian, there's some keywords you can't use because people go into this trance state like, oh, fuck, you're trying to sell me on being healthy. And it doesn't make any sense at all. So back to ketosis. Ketosis is 70% fat diet, 70% fats. Olive oil, coconut oil, MCT oil, hemp oil is a good one. Macadamia nut oil is good. Macadamia nuts are good.
Mm-hmm.
Brazil nuts are really high fat. Like any nuts that are really high in fat, monounsaturated fats is what you want to use. Medium chain triglycerides turn right into ketones in the liver. Those are really good. The saturated fat turns into ketones. I would reduce your intake, if not eliminate your intake of cholesterol, which comes from meat. That's if you want to be super strict. Any leafy greens, any fibrous carbohydrate, high water foods, cucumbers, celery, all those type of things.
And I would add to this, I think
no fruit.
No fruit. Just because you're eating like you should be, say on this diet, and you're following it to the T, it goes hand in hand, I'd say, with working out, because you want to excrete as much ketones from your liver as possible, and by working out and drinking water, drink lots of water when you're on this diet, because like I just said, you want to excrete as many ketones from your liver as you can. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, there's acetoacetate. There's 3 ketones: acetoacetate, acetone, and beta hydroxybutyrate. And the acetone, you breathe out. Some people's breath will stink when they go into ketosis, or you'll taste pennies, and that's the acetone. But the acetoacetate and the 3-hydroxybutyrate go into your blood, and they have a lot of hydrogens, so they're really acidic. And that's where the ketoacidosis and ketonuria and all these problems come in, is when your blood turns really acidic. You start having some health issues there. But those will your liver will constantly be pushing those through your bloodstream, and if you don't use them, like as in exercise, then you're going to have issues where if you were in starvation mode, like fasting for a super long time, that's what happens. People start throwing up, and there's some other health issues that happen, and you pretty much acidosis is what happens. And that's what everybody's afraid of. Like diabetics will get it, like if it's uncontrolled. But usually if you're on a diet, you're eating some type of protein, as long as you're exercising and drinking lots of water to make sure your kidneys are working really good. You have some kind of buffering system, so usually... And most people break a ketogenic diet eventually. Like they'll eat carbs one day, like maybe every 10 days, just have a carb day. And sometimes that's good just to stimulate some anabolic processes and whatnot in your body.
Another thing that you need to know about is the keto flu, which is something you might come across where you feel like shit for at least a couple days. I think up to 10 days. I mean, it varies per person, 2 days, 10 days, but you'll get headaches. It's because your body is going through withdrawals. I mean, you're like someone that was on drugs and now you're coming off glycogen, and because you're not eating carbs anymore. And that may last a few days, but it's nausea,
that's a good point,
headaches.
All drugs have to do with how they change your brain chemistry. So when you talk about an addict having withdrawals, coming off whatever, alcoholic or whatever it is, then you're talking about a change. And I'm sure there's some type of changes in your brain that cause swelling in certain regions because it's not used to. I mean, if you're running on glucose and your brain's like, oh yeah, my primary source, glucose. Oh, we have as much glucose as we need, blah, blah, blah. And then you try to switch it over to ketones. I'm sure it's kind of freaking out. And it's kind of going into like, oh, what the hell is this mode? We're starving. Oh, shit. And then you start getting headaches. You're probably dehydrated a little bit because you don't hold as much water because there's not as many glycogen stores. But
So one more thing I'd